Let's go ahead and get started. So I want to start just by showing this, um, this image of all of the current watches, warnings, and advisories in effect across the United States. And as you can see, it's a very colorful map. There is a lot of weather going on right now. Um, a lot of weather actually happening right now, a lot of weather forecast to happen over the weekend and into next week. And Um, it runs the gamut from blizzards to flooding to severe weather to high winds, um, to heat. So I'm gonna try to cover as much of it as I can here. So let's go ahead and jump in. So looking at the satellite image currently, you look and you see there's actually a lot of sunny skies right now, for much of the country, but I kind of belays the impacts because um, in that stream of cloudiness from the Pacific Northwest into the North Central states, there's quite a bit of heavy precipitation and high winds under that. And then probably the most impactful feature going on right now is this swirling low pressure center that you can see here where my cursor is over Lake Huron area. So this low pressure system is very intense and it's producing widespread damaging winds across the Great Lakes region. And some of these wind gusts, particularly over the lower lakes region, uh, are incredible. I mean, there's some of the highest just gradient winds I've ever seen. And part of the reason is because the sun is out. The sun is out, so that enables the atmosphere to warm, and we're mixing all of those strong winds at higher altitudes in the atmosphere down. And some of these wind gusts, we actually recently just had an 85-mile-an-hour wind gust at Cleveland Hopkins Airport. You can see 70 miles an hour here near Findlay and Lima, and 60 to 70-mile-an-hour winds common, 76 here at Dayton, 70-mile-an-hour gust here near Fort Wayne, 73 miles an hour at Gary, Indiana. So just some really incredible, what we call synoptic, just large scale gradient winds from this low pressure system. And the impacts are significant. There are nearly 1 million customers now without power in the Great Lakes region, including over 400,000 just in Ohio alone. If we zoom in and take a look at this a little more closely, um, you can see here that much of the northern half of, really most of Ohio has significant power outages, and especially here in the western part of the state, into the north central part of the state. This here is Shelby County, and you can see out of 17,000 customers, almost 12,000 are without power. So those winds are going to continue um, into this evening once the sun goes down and um, the low pressure system starts to pull away. And let me go back here. I'm going to zoom in a little more closely here on the Great Lakes region. This is the European model. And you can see here the center of the low pressure. This was at 1200 Universal Time this morning, so about 7 a.m. The low was here over uh, um, just approaching the northern part of Lake Michigan. It's now moved over Lake Huron. It's forecast to continue to move east into Ontario tonight, and the winds will be dramatically decreasing over the next few hours across the region, but obviously much of the damage has already been done. Uh, so, as I mentioned, there are impacts also occurring under that band of cloudiness and storminess that's across the Pacific Northwest. You can see we have flood watches here for parts of western Washington, northwestern Oregon, and parts of eastern Washington state. with some river flood warnings also in effect. And then we have winter storm warnings, uh, partially due to some snow ongoing now, but then we're also going to have a major winter storm coming up for this weekend. So let's talk about that. If we look at, if we go back here to the European model for this weekend, and if you're a regular follower of my posts, you know that I focus a lot on the 500 millibar level, which is about 18,000 feet above ground level, because that really shows us what's going on kind of in the middle and upper levels of the atmosphere. It gives us an idea of the jet stream pattern. And the the system in question here is this area out here in the Pacific Northwest uh, that's digging into this region on Saturday. So this forecast here is for 4 p.m. Central Time Saturday. You can see the current low pressure systems moving off the East Coast. Um, I'll just mention um, there'll probably be some strong winds tomorrow in the wake of that across New England. So they'll be next. Winds don't look quite as strong as what they're seeing today in the Great Lakes, but still gusty winds. So let's focus now on this next system. So this system is going to be digging across the upper mid the northern Rockies and toward the upper Midwest through the weekend. And one of the things that's really trended on this system in the last 48 hours so of model forecasts is this system is now forecast to, when I say dig, we're basically talking about a system that's like pushing southeast, but also what we call deepening. So it's strengthening, getting stronger as it's moving southeast. And what's what's happened in the last 48 hours is the models have progressively trended farther to the southwest with how this system is going to dig. In other words, it's going to be even stronger and deeper and farther to the west than some of the earlier forecasts were showing. And that has some profound implications on the forecast, not only for the winter storm, which we've been talking about for a couple days now, which is forecast to bring blizzard conditions to parts of the Great Lakes and Midwest. It also has a very significant impact on the potential for severe weather, which a couple of days ago looked like it would probably be relatively low with this system and primarily confined to just a squall line. But as time has gone on, that threat has ramped up because of the trends in the trough being farther to the west, and also because the Gulf of Mexico is so incredibly warm. It's literally record warm. So all of that moisture is being pulled up ahead of this system now that it's slower and farther to the west. And all that means we're going to have more of a risk for severe weather with this system than was initially uh, anticipated. So let's turn to the Weather Prediction Center here and take a look at their key messages for this mid-March blizzard. And this was just updated just a little bit ago. And you can see here, this is their winter storm severity index. And essentially, this is like a probabilistic product that combines the probabilistic risks of heavy snow, wind, temperature, and combines it with societal factors to give an idea of what sort of impacts we're anticipating, taking into account the fact that certain areas are more prepared for winter weather and some areas are less. Obviously, the upper Midwest and Great Lakes are very prepared for winter weather. So the fact that we are anticipating major to extreme impacts from this blizzard tells you that this is going to be a really major event. And if we look at total snowfall accumulations as forecast by the Weather Prediction Center, we're looking at more than a foot over a huge swath here from eastern South Dakota across about the southern half of Minnesota, and then much of northern and central Wisconsin and into the upper peninsula of Michigan. And these really dark reds in here from east of La Crosse across much of the upper peninsula are in excess of 2 feet. So this looks like this is going to be really a crippling winter storm. And if we go back and look at the model forecast for this is the European model. Um, when we look at the surface forecast, you can see this very intense low pressure system uh, deepening down to about 980 millibars. It's very low for an overland uh, surface low like this. And just you can see all of these packed lines here. These are isobars, basically lines of equal pressure. And the more packed they are, the stronger the winds are. And you can see just incredible wind here across the upper Midwest. This is Monday morning and going through Monday afternoon. Continuing, we can look at the actual forecast wind gusts here from the European model. And you can see here widespread 50 to even 60, 70 mile an hour winds. Monday afternoon, if we go back and look at Sunday afternoon, you can see where the heavy snow is occurring over Iowa and northern Wisconsin. We have widespread 40 to 50 mile an hour wind gusts, which is well above blizzard criteria. And then we also have some strong southerly winds ahead of the low pressure center, potential for wind gusts of 50 to 60 miles an hour. And then some incredibly strong winds back here in the plains where we'll be dealing with a fire weather threat. And I'll touch on that briefly as well. So let's turn now to the severe weather risk. So, I mentioned that, the Gulf of Mexico is record warm. So that that is going to help bring sufficient moisture up to bring a line of severe thunderstorms and potentially a few supercell storms ahead of it. Luckily, this shot of cold air that we've had behind our initial system that produced the severe weather the last few days is going to mean we're not going to have a huge what we call warm sector, a really big area of warmth and instability that this system can tap into. But there will be uh, a corridor right along the front. You can see here the low pressure. This is for Sunday evening at 7 p.m. You can see the low pressure center here almost right over Chicago with this incredibly strong cold front driving back through the mid-south and into southeast Texas. So dew points ahead of this line or ahead of the front are going to be getting into the upper 50s to low to mid 60s, which again is not sufficient for a huge widespread number of thunderstorms ahead of it. But what it will fuel with these really incredible atmospheric dynamics with this intense system, it will enable a line of really intense severe thunderstorms right along the front, along with the potential for a few supercell storms ahead of it. So based on all of that, the Storm Prediction Center has put in a enhanced risk of severe storms for day 3, which is Sunday. And if we look at the categorical risk, you can see there's an enhanced risk here from the Indianapolis area back to near St. Louis and then down into the Arklatex region. And if we look at the probabilistic, we can see a large area of what's called SIG-1. So the first category of significant severe. And this is primarily going to be for the potential for widespread high-end damaging winds with this line of storms that's going to sweep east along the cold front, along with the potential for a few strong tornadoes. And SPC is actually concerned enough about this situation that they took the relatively rare step of, and sorry, I have to call this up. They actually took the relatively rare step of updating the day 4 outlook, doing a special day 4 outlook update this afternoon to expand the risk of severe thunderstorms along the East Coast with this system on Monday, now showing a 30%, which would be the equivalent to an enhanced severe weather risk from south central Pennsylvania, all the way down into the Carolinas, with a 15% surrounding that, um, down into the Florida Panhandle. So we've got blizzard, we've got severe weather, we've got widespread just gradient winds, high winds across a large area of the Great Lakes and Midwest. And we also have fire weather. So if we look at the fire weather outlooks here from the Storm Prediction Center, uh, you can see the day 2 outlook ahead of this system. We have a large area on Saturday of critical fire danger for the Front Range of the Rockies into the high plains, including Cheyenne, Denver metro area, Albuquerque, down toward El Paso. All of this area has been very dry. Uh, with high winds, there's already a number of significant wildfires burning in like in Nebraska. Um, so obviously this is only going to worsen conditions. If we go to the next days, the day 3 through 7 outlook, we can see the highest risks on day 3 and day 4 here across the southern plains. But if we look at just the forecast for dry um, for potential dryness, uh, we're going to see that even extending up toward like southern plains, there's a risk here across like Amarillo, and I would not be surprised to see some of this actually expanded farther north. They'll be getting ready to update this forecast here in just a couple hours, and I wouldn't be surprised to see some of these probabilities for Sunday uh, raised farther to the north. So, well, we've covered the fire weather. So let's talk a little bit about um, the heat for next week, because that's a whole nother um, issue. And let's take a look at the model forecast here again, so we can talk a little bit about what's causing all of this. Um, so, as I posted about yesterday, we're looking at this really incredibly strong uh, area of upper level high pressure that we can see at this 500 millibar level. And if we look at a loop here, so this is watching our system go through the northern Rockies tomorrow. But then as we see going into Sunday, this really intense upper level ridge that's already across the eastern Pacific really starts to expand east in the wake of that storm system. And as we go into the middle part of next week, it just parks itself across the western United States and just continues to intensify. And if we look here, this is Wednesday at midnight, Wednesday night. So Thursday morning, essentially, very early Thursday morning uh, in the East for Eastern time. So late Wednesday evening in the West. Uh, This is showing the height contours, which are essentially equivalent to pressure on a surface weather map. And these values of 594, that shows that the level of this is like at 5,950 meters. So that is incredibly high for this time of year. Those are record levels for Arizona. They would be record levels in May and June. And the fact that we're seeing this, essentially the hotter an air mass is, the higher the pressure is through the depth of the atmosphere. So the fact that we're seeing these types of forecasts for the 500 millibar heights tells us that we have an incredibly unusually warm and deep atmosphere across the western United States. And you can see that system is pretty much there through the end of next week and into the weekend. It does start to weaken a little bit, but essentially we're looking at a multi-day, literally record-shattering event with multiple days of not only daily record high temperatures for a large part of the West and Southwest, but also monthly records, which is really impressive considering we're only talking about, we're like in the third week of March, and typically March being a transition season, we see most of the monthly high temperature records being set toward the end of the month ordinarily. So if we go back to the Weather Prediction Center here, uh, we can see, probability of temperatures exceeding 90 degrees. They're way up there because some of these areas like Phoenix and Yuma and um, the desert Southwest are going to be getting well above 100 degrees. The record March max temperature for Phoenix is 100. They'll probably blast through that several times during the next 10 days. Um, Las Vegas could potentially get close to 100. They've never been 100 this early. Um, so basically, we're going to have a number of monthly records over a multi day period here in the West. And this will be hot enough to actually cause some pretty significant heat risk uh, in these areas, including all the way to the Southern California coast. Um, so I think I've just about covered everything I want to cover as far as, well, no, I do want to cover one other thing with regard to temperatures, and that is that in the wake of the low pressure system um, that's going to bring the blizzard to the Great Lakes and Midwest this week, um, we're also going to see some, while maybe it won't be nearly as record breaking cold as the warmth in the West, but we are going to have a period of brief shot of Arctic air coming down into uh, the eastern U.S. behind this system for early next week. And if we take a look at forecast low temperatures from the European model for, don't look at that, that's way out. If we look here for Tuesday and into Tuesday night, um, you can see widespread single digits and below zero temperatures in the upper Midwest, with potential for significant freeze all the way down to like the I-20 corridor in the Southeast and into the Mid Atlantic. And obviously, it's been unseasonably warm for several days over much of this area. Um, I know I've seen a lot of people talking on social media about things starting to bloom. Um, so obviously, getting such a cold snap after this extensive warmth is of concern. And obviously, I mean, wind chills will be, uh, you know, well below zero in the upper Midwest and even, down into the single digits across parts of the Ohio Valley and Northeast. So a definite sharp shock to the system after all of the warm weather of the last several days, and until the last 24 hours, obviously. Um, Many locations along the East Coast after this first front actually had some of their biggest 24-hour temperature swings on record going into yesterday, um, with some snow occurring in the Mid Atlantic after temperatures were in the 80s uh, on Wednesday. So last thing I just want to mention really quickly, and I'll talk about this hopefully more tomorrow, is we don't want to forget about the high impact weather going on in Hawaii. Uh, Very unusual weather setup for them as they've got this Kona low pattern, which basically means a winter type low pressure center uh, impacting Hawaii rather than the typical trade winds that they usually deal with most of the year. Um, this is bringing this is a current radar, and you can see there's waves of thunderstorms moving across the island chain right now. There is some severe weather with some of this activity. Special marine warnings are in effect. There have been some severe thunderstorm and flash flood warnings in effect. And this weather is going to continue through the weekend. It's a unusually prolonged Kona low setup with unusually high levels of moisture. So um, folks in Hawaii are dealing with their own very high impact weather right now. So now I think that is actually all I have uh, to say. Like I said, a lot to cover. Decided a video was a better way to do it than to try to uh, write about all that. Um, Let me check the chat here and see if we have any questions. I don't see any. Does anybody have any last question here before I wrap up? And sorry that the sun has changed angles since I started, and I look like I have stripes across my face. Shadows. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining on this. I'm gonna get a copy of this uploaded onto the Substack soon, and be able to watch it at your leisure. And we'll have more tomorrow. Thanks, everybody.